Welcome back, friends. Today is a special podcast episode with my partner, Todd Rothermel. And the point of today is to convince you to start putting money away for your retirement, even though it's something you might not normally think about when you're younger. So let me give you a little bit of history about Todd. He does have an MBA, but he is the first person in his family to have a college education. And he learned how to save money and to invest for retirement from his mom, who did not graduate from college, and her job was as a customer service in either FedEx or DHL. And she learned to invest for her retirement and to be frugal with her money through her parents. So it really comes a lot from our upbringing. So I'm going to start asking questions, Todd, but I think you need to read
I have a disclaimer, and a disclaimer about my disclaimers. I'm getting this from ChatGPT, and Bentley's walking through the picture. The information in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. I am not a licensed financial advisor, investment professional, or tax professional. Nothing here should be considered personalized financial investment or tax advice. You should consult a qualified professional for advice specific to your situation. The views expressed are my own and do not represent the views of my employer or any financial institution. And with that, go ahead.
Okay, we'll get started. So even though Todd does have an MBA and he works in banking, everything that he has done is not because of what he learned later in life. It's because of what he learned from his mom. So let's start with the beginning, why people don't start investing or why they don't save money. Why do you think some people in their 30s, 20s, or even 40s feel intimidated by investing?
I think it's a couple of things. I think the most important thing is people just don't know, and they're just not educated about it. When I was in high school or middle school, whatever, anyone goes to school, like you learn history, you learn geometry, you learn, reading, all these things. Like there's so many things I've learned in school I've never used in my life, but you never learn personal finance. I'm not going to get into why I think that is, my own personal views of why that is, but they don't teach it to you in school. They don't teach you about investing. They don't teach you about how to handle money. It's just not discussed in school. So I think most people are just not educated about it. So they don't start because they don't know there was anything to start in the first place. And two, I think there's a huge market industry behind investments, and they try to make it as confusing as possible for you on purpose. So you don't know what you're talking about, and they use words and jargon to make it as confusing as possible. So people, will pay fees and pay people to do it for them because they just don't understand it. But can I continue on?
Continue on,
because I have a lot to say about the subject. But I think to flip that question on its head is, why don't people start? The converse question would be, why should someone start? And I heard this a long time ago from somebody somewhere down the line that, and it rings very true to me, is all your problems in life stem from three main buckets, right? They're in a very specific order: your health, your wealth, and relationships. So starting with health, right? If you don't have your health, if you're dying of cancer, if you have a terminal illness, if you got hit by a car and you're in a body cast in a hospital, your wealth and your relationships might not mean as much to you in that moment in time, right? That's your most important thing in life, is your own personal health. And you deal with that a lot with people and working out and stuff. From there, it's your wealth, right? Do you have enough money to put a roof over your head, to feed you, to clothe you, to have, just to live, right? And then from there, once you have those kind of bases covered, then it gets to the final basis, your relationships with your friends and your family and your kids and etc. So while wealth is not the most important thing in life, it's a very important thing, and most people just don't talk about it or discuss it. And I think it's important.
Okay. I'm going to go into the first question, why starting now matters, regardless if you're in your 40s or in your 30s or in your 20s. And let's start with the idea, maybe explain to people compounding interest. What's simple interest? And then what's compounding interest?
Right. the best time if you want it sounds like my questions are geared towards retirement, which is fine. So it's important to start as early as possible. I mean, ideally you start the day you're born, but nobody did. So, right. But you should have started then. Right. But it just makes life easier. I like to think of it. I like to put like complex issues or complex thoughts into like a simple analogy. Right. So I think of it as the proverbial snowball rolling down a hill, if you will. So if you're on a big hill and you roll a tiny snowball, as that snowball rolls downhill, it starts to collect more snow and more snow. And as it gets bigger, it has a bigger surface volume. Has a bigger surface area, then it collects more snow. And as it gets bigger and bigger, it just collects more and more snow because it's just bigger. And by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill, it's ginormous. That's basically compound interest in a story, if you will. Right? It's your money. Yeah, your money just grows, and as it grows, it gets bigger, and it generates more money and more money and more money. So you save $1,000 today, and in 20 years, let's say $1,000 has now grown to $100,000. Well, if you make 10% that $100,000, you just made additional $10,000, and you only put in 1,000. So it just compounds year over year. So time is very important when it comes to investing. Obviously, the earlier you start, the better it is, and the bigger that snowball is going to be at the end of the hill than if you start later, right? If you're able to start up higher up on that hill, then you just have more time to accumulate snow coming down. If you're walking down that hill, the further you walk down, the less time you have to accumulate that snowball, if you will. So the earlier, the better. The best time to start would have been in your 20s, your teens. The next best time to start is right now.
Okay, great. So it's not too late, even if you're starting in your 30s, because some people might not have thought of that in their first first jobs.
No, it's not too late. Right? You still have plenty of time. It's just earlier the better. So however old you are now, it's good to think about not just retirement, but just having money in general. And having money in general just helps you. It just gives you options in life, which I think is important. Right? It gives you flexibility. It gives you options. It's just an important thing to think about.
Can you talk about the idea? Because I think in the New York area, everyone doesn't think about savings or retirement because they're just like, I'm just going to grind. I'm just going to grind. If I'm working hard, I'm going to have money.
Right. Yeah. You can grind and work hard and have money. The problem is you can only grind for so long. I'm getting older. You're getting older. Everyone's getting older. And I'll tell you, getting older, life just gets harder. No matter how much you grind, your body can only handle so much. And at some point, you're just not going to want to do it. So if you want to have money for the rest of your life, and when you retire, you're not going to be grinding anymore, you need to start putting away money now and let your money do some working for you, right? When you start investing more money, you can just have it work for you, and you can make more money while you're not working. I think that's the important thing about retirement or in investing, is just being able to have money for yourself while you're not working, or you can't work. God forbid. I have more anxiety than the average person. I always think about what happens if I got hit by a car tomorrow, or I have cancer, or something terrible happens to me and I can't work for whatever reason. I want to make sure I'm okay, that I can live my life to the best I can if I'm not able to work for whatever reason. That's all. And another, I want to say more thing. I know you're excited to ask me questions. I'm going to go off here on a tangent for a little bit. Because it feels like it's just me and you talking.
It's just me.
I also heard a fun saying. I forget where I heard it from, but somebody said to me, if you spend your money, you don't get to keep it, which I don't think a lot of people think about, right? People just want to buy things, and that's fine, but I don't think people even realize, like, if you spend your money, it's gone. It doesn't come back. You don't get to keep it, right? It just goes into someone else's pocket now. So, that's what I think about when I spend my money. If I spend it, I mean, I have to spend money. You spend money, buy food, groceries, clothes, all these things. But, once I spend my money, it's out the door. I don't get it back. I don't get to use it to make more money. I don't get to keep it for another day, a rainy day, whatever. It's gone forever.
let me just put a caveat. So Todd is not a normal person because when it comes to shopping, and I like to shop. I'm a girl. I like fashiony things. He only buys his clothing every year on Black Friday. And as our friend Jeanette will make fun of him, he likes to buy Costco clothing. how cost conscious he is. So you don't have to necessarily be that extreme.
Sure.
But before we get into the next question, I actually want to address something that was a trend probably back in the 2000s when there was a book that came out called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that author would support the idea of you need passive income, as in invest in real estate, and the rental income is passive income. So before you think about real estate, I'm going to have Todd talk about his thoughts. And also his brother did do that and found it wasn't so passive. Right. Talk about that kind of passive.
First, if we go back to Costco clothing, because I will say I'm very proud of my $30 Costco jacket. I tell everybody I can, I have this amazing jacket I bought from Costco and it cost me $3. I'm so proud of it. It's only because of 4 years ago, I bought that other jacket from, I won't say what brand it was, but after about a year and a half of wearing it in the winter, it's all tattered. It looks like crap. And I think I spent $250 on that. And that was 4 years ago. Today it's probably $300, $350 for that same jacket.
How long did you use it?
A year and a half. 1.5 winters. That was it.
Oh, that's the expensive jacket you bought.
And the $30 Costco jacket, I'm on year 2. Beautiful, perfect. Only cost me $30. Love that jacket. Very proud of it.
All right.
Back to real estate and passive income.
Yeah, because everyone thinks real estate is passive income.
It's not passive. There's a lot of things you have to worry about when you own real estate, right? You have to get a management company if you're not going to manage it. You have to upkeep it, maintenance. You got to find a tenant, make sure a tenant doesn't tear it apart, whether it's a house or commercial real estate. You have to worry about the local economy of that, wherever the building is at. You can't pick up the building and move it from point A to point B. You need to worry about that. If it's a good neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. Things go wrong, things break. It's literally a building that the entire world is trying to turn into rubble, into the ground over time. And it just takes a lot of money and time and energy to keep that building going. So it's not necessarily passive. Yeah, you can get income from it, but don't think it's going to be, work free. It's going to be, people love it. We know people that love buying real estate.
And that's because they love that. They love decorating it. Right. They love the whole process. And that's when it becomes, an investment that works for them.
Right. But me, I'm lazy. I don't want to do that.
The point of this podcast episode is talking about how the one thing in life where there, especially if you're not going to be making investing like a second job, let's talk about the way you invest. So let's start with first, one of the intimidations people have is probably thinking they have to be good at picking stocks.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll start from the beginning. Maybe people don't know what stocks are. So stocks are simply you buy ownership in a particular company. For example, Apple, let's say, right? Apple has, I don't know, millions and millions of shares of stock. Basically, that means they take the ownership of that company and they break it up into 100 million pieces, right? And you can literally go online now and just buy a little piece of Apple. 1/100th of a millionth of Apple or whatever it is, right? You can go online and just buy it today. You now are part owner of Apple, right? I've never set foot in Apple. I've never set foot in Google's headquarters. I've never set foot in any of these companies' headquarters. But I own part of them we'll get to, I guess, in a bit, but I own, S&P 500 and, I just own a bunch of different companies and they do amazing things, right? We all own Apple. And we search Google and we do all these other things.
So that's what a stock is. And that piece is publicly traded,
right?
Which means not every company is a publicly traded company. They just went through certain legal, I guess, requirements so that they could be put on a public marketplace.
Right. They can put it on a public marketplace. They're regulated by the SEC and they have to follow, certain rules. They publish their financials online. You can go online right now and look at Apple's financials and you can read about them and how they've done historically, how their business is done. Anyone needs public information, right? So you can go on, see who the management is, what their forecast is for the future, how they're doing, what their products are, how much money they've made, et cetera, for any of these companies. If you really wanted to, it's all there.
Oh, I wanted to add one thing as education. So one of the reasons why the U.S. stock market is such a big deal and why people invest here is because of that information transparency. Even though libertarians are like, oh, the government gets too involved in things, the government is there to protect you. So these are government laws that require these companies to be transparent with their financials so that when you invest, you know what's going on.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about why you don't need to necessarily be picking stocks,
Right.
Which is an intimidating factor in thinking that, oh, this is how I have to invest. I have to know everything about these companies.
Yeah. So going back to the fact that I'm lazy, let's talk about that for a minute. I'm not going to figure out who the best companies are to buy. I'll have time, energy, and whatnot. And if I did have the time, energy, and whatnot, I would probably be wrong anyway. Most people would be wrong,
Investment professionals,
including investment. There's a good thought experiment. I won't get into this podcast, but if anyone reaches out, I have a good thought experiment that we've gone down. Anyways, back to not picking stocks, right? So I don't know who the next big Apple is going to be, the next big Google, the next big Nvidia, whatever, right? Like there's literally, I think there's like 4,300 stocks on the stock exchange right now you could buy. That's a public company. I have no idea who's going to be the best companies out of that 4,300 in the next 5, 10, 15 years. No clue. Most people don't. So what I do is what a lot of people do is I buy low cost index funds. Low cost index funds is, let's start with the low cost part, right? Let's break it up. Low cost means it's got a low expense ratio. An expense ratio is how much money the company or professionals will charge you for that particular fund. You can go online and you can search expense ratio of whatever it is you want, whatever fund you want.
We'll give an example, like a Vanguard.
Like a Vanguard. I use Vanguard. A lot of people use Vanguard. They're very much low cost.
That's what they're famous for.
Right. They're very famous for low cost. So for example, there's this ticker called VOO, which is basically the S&P 500. It's the biggest 500 stocks in America. It includes,
that's what the S&P 500 is.
Right. Includes Nvidia, includes Apple, includes Visa, Home Depot, Walmart, on and on. I can just go on Johnson & Johnson, right? The biggest 500, every company that everybody uses in America and across the world are in the S&P 500. It's a very broad index. It includes tech, includes industrials, includes pharmaceuticals, et cetera, right? Consumer goods, everything. So Vanguard is very low cost. So for example, their expense ratio is like 0.03%, right? So every year, whether that S&P goes up or down, they charge me 0.03% of my investment in VOO to just manage it, right?
Can we add on one thing so people know how high it can go? If you don't pay attention to it, do something.
So Vanguard does passive index funds, which is basically there's nobody behind the wheel managing it, right? It's just like an algorithm that manages it. But they have active management funds. There's people behind the wheel, if you will, actually buying, determining who's
they're stock picking.
Yeah, they're stock picking. They're determining who they think is going to be the best stocks, and they charge you for that though. So their expense ratios could be, I don't know, a 0.5% or 1%. So every year, whether they make money or not, they charge you 1%, 1.5%, 0.5%, whatever, to do that for you. The problem with that is over the next 10, 20, 30 years of your investment life, that really adds up over the long term.
Someone's just taking that 1% from you every year.
Every year, good or bad, they're taking it from you one a year, and 1% doesn't seem like a lot, but you add that up over 30 years, we're talking, we could hundreds of thousands of dollars easily over your lifetime. So, I always use low cost index and I let the market figure it out, and I don't have to worry about it. I just keep buying, whether things are going up, whether things are coming down, just buying.
Okay. So we covered why it's not necessarily to be a stock picker. Could you also talk about the fact why an S&P 500 index fund still beats most investment professionals. Everyone thinks that, oh, he's a financial advisor, he's an investor, that he's going to beat the market, but the facts show otherwise.
I will say yes. There are people that can beat the market. I think the most famous would be Warren Buffett, that everyone knows about. Like, is it possible? Sure. Else out there, Warren Buffett, very, very few of us. Like, he's literally just.
He's a unicorn.
I've read an autobiography about him. He's great, but like, he lives and breathes this stuff. Like, he does it all day, every day. It's just who he is as a person.
Since he was like a kid.
Right. But if you learn, we're just not that. Just accept your limitations.
Mm-hmm. He also is a frugal with himself. He's not extravagant.
Right.
He does it for the love of the numbers versus
he does it for
not,
numbers,
to
not
just
for the
because
money.
He wants to get rich.
He doesn't need the money. What were we talking about now?
I guess because everyone might think, oh, I need to have some investment professional.
It comes down to averages, right? So somebody could be, if you randomly threw darts at a dartboard and you pick 20 stocks by randomly throwing darts, right? You might beat the market this year. And that's great. Next year, you do the same thing. You might beat it again. Great. And the third year, maybe you do less. Maybe the fourth year, you beat it. And anyways, over a long-term horizon, you're just going to be average, right? Like, sometimes you beat it, sometimes you make it worse, but you're creating a lot of work for yourself, right?
That's also something to do in the Wall Street Journal. They actually do that DART method experiment to see if they can beat the market.
Yeah, and you can some years, right? You just randomly, you'll beat it, right?
But not over a 50.
But over 10, 20, 30 years, as you do year over year, right? Some years you'll do better, some years you'll do worse. And then at the end, you just average it out and you're probably about average, right? So when you buy something like, low cost index fund that's very much diversified, you're just getting average returns, right? Some people are going to beat the market one year, and some people are going to do worse in the market. You're guaranteed just to be average, right? And I don't have to do anything. I don't have to think about anything. I don't have to worry about anything. I just buy it and let everyone else do all the work for me, and I just float along.
Would you say this is the one thing in life where literally it's set it and forget it?
Yeah, because I own, if you buy the S&P 500 or any large index fund, you own all these great companies, and these companies, I work for a company, you work for yourself, but a lot of people out there work for various companies, right? Maybe they're on the market, maybe they're not, right? Like, there's managers out there managing Apple, and there's people working for Apple, and people doing all these things, and they pay them, and right. So as somebody who owns now some of these companies, it's just like, these people just work for the company, right? Like, they're out there doing these things, but they still generate a return. And as an investor, that's what you want, is that return on your money. These companies are doing, I don't have to do it. I don't do anything. The company hires managers and other people to work for them to do these things. Yeah, I literally have to do nothing, which is what I enjoy doing.
So this is an example how you don't, in order to get started on saving for your retirement or just saving, you don't need to be a stock picker to do well over time.
And it's probably best not to do that, right? They've done multiple studies on, people just not going to beat the market year over year over year. So
those studies are based on investment professionals.
Right. You can Google it. There's lots of information out there.
Okay. So now that we've convinced you that you need to be putting money away for yourself, let's talk about the part that can be intimidating is what kind of formats. So let's maybe cover first, if you're someone who works for yourself, like I do, then I didn't even know about the 401k individual until he said it. So I have a Roth IRA, and then the second one is a 401k for individuals. Which is what I have. And that only works if you work for yourself, not for when you have employees. Do you want to talk about maybe if you're someone who works for somebody else, the kind of investments or vehicles that you have set aside money for?
Yeah, I think there's a great, I'll move people towards an online piece of information here. It's completely free, because I love free. But if you Google personal finance flowchart Reddit, somebody's already put together an amazing flowchart online that goes through how you should, if you're interested in like retirement accounts and where you should start, where you put your money. It's an amazing flowchart of going through like what to do. Like, It starts with the very basics too. It's like, do you have enough money to put a roof over your head? Yes or no. And if you say yes, well, then you move on. Do you have enough money to put food on the table and like the basics, right? And then from there, it's like, do you have enough money put away for a 6-month emergency if something happens? And then from there, it's like, okay, do you have extra money to actually invest in your retirement? It's like, yes. It's like, well, do you work for a company? Do you work for this? Do you work for yourself? And then you can then it goes into 401ks, it gets into Roth IRAs, it gets into IRAs. It can get a little bit complicated, but it's a great place to start to at least show you where to go, what to do, and in chronological order of how to do it. So I would totally recommend Googling that personal finance flowchart Reddit. Thank you, Redditors. But yeah, 401ks is a great vehicle. Most people probably listening have access to.
If you work for somebody else.
If you work for a company, you usually get a 401k. It allows you basically and a lot of companies actually will match you if you invest in that. So you should know what your company's policy is. And they'll literally give you free money. Who doesn't want free money? Literally, like certain a lot of companies will match like 6%. So like the first 6% you invest, they'll match you dollar for dollar on that up to like the first 6%. So, who wouldn't want a free 6% increase in their money, like just by doing nothing? So it's fantastic. But the good thing about 401ks, just to break it down real easily, is that it's tax deferred. And by that, I mean, if you put $1,000 into your 401k, you don't get taxed on that thought. Even though you earn that income, you don't get taxed on it. So in reality, you put $1,000, let's say, into your 401k, you might only see your actual paycheck decrease by $600. And that $400 difference is just, you're not paying $400 in additional taxes that you would have normally.
So basically your taxes are based on your income, not including that money.
Correct. So it takes that money, deducts it from your income. So if you have $5,000 a month, you took $4,000 of that, right? You put it in your 401k, then you only get taxed on $4,000, not the $5,000. So, you get taxed less, which who doesn't want to pay less taxes? The only caveat being is that money will now grow tax-free the whole time it's in the 401k, but you can't touch it until you're, I want to say 59 and a half, your 401k. So you can't pull it out. You can't, you can in theory, you can pull it out, but you got to pay
it's a hefty fee.
It's
like a fine.
It's a fine. You got to pay 10%. But anyways, you can't touch it.
Well, it's your own money. So basically, if you take it out early, you're throwing away some of the money that you set aside.
Right. Well, it's not thrown away. It gets taxed. And I'm sure the government does good things with it. I'm sure.
Yes.
But yeah, when it does come out eventually, as you become retired and 59 and a half, you do have to pay taxes on it when it does flow back to you. So, but it's a great vehicle to defer taxes and reduce your taxable income today.
So this still can seem very confusing to people. Let's say you don't have tons of disposable income to set aside. Well, what would your first step be? The Roth, the 401k, which would you go first? Or
I would, once again, it comes down to, I would go back to that flow chart from Reddit. But if you have a 401k and your employer is going to match you up to a certain percent, do that. Like,
because you're getting extra
they're giving
money.
You free money. So up to 6%, say that 6% is, I don't know, $200. They'll give you just another $200 for free. So you have now $400, right? You put in 200, you now have 400. Who doesn't want double their money on day one? That's just free money. So yeah, I would start with that. But once again, you can just go online, ask ChatGPT. There's so much free information out there, good information just to access IRAs, Roth IRAs, 401ks, all these kinds of things. It seems complicated at first, but you can just ask ChatGPT at this point. It's explain it to you.
Okay. So now let's say you have put money away and you start being interested in what's going on. And I think this is, actually I had someone message, this is one of their fears. You can't also be watching the market at every second. Could you talk a little bit about what happens or what do you do when you see the market drop? We've
So
had that where it has volatility, where market's going up, 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 and then all of a sudden one day you hear it on the news, you're like, oh, huge, whatever, 5% drop.
my investment thesis is, and not everyone will agree with me, but most people probably would, and the smarter ones probably, people I think would be the smarter ones would, is that you just stay and just do nothing. Like it's and that sounds very easy theoretically to do nothing, especially when the market goes down 20%, 30%, 40%, possibly 50%. Um, it's very hard to do nothing when stuff is going. We feel like everything is going to hell in a handbag, if you will. But as long as as long as you're working, it depends if whether you're retired now or you're working or where you are in your own personal life. When things go down 20, 30, 40%, let's say I'm working right now, I think about it as, to use another analogy, like a lot of people like to shop, right? Everyone knows like when something goes on sale, right? Who wouldn't, if something goes on sale 40, 50%, you're looking at a jacket or a coat or something and it drops 40%, 50% because it goes on sale. Everybody's thrilled. Everyone's like, oh my God, I got to go out there and buy this coat I was looking at, or shoes or whatever. And it's 50% off. What's better than that, right? So when the market goes down 30, 40, 50% for whatever reason, all these great companies now that are still doing great things, in the world and still making products and still selling are just gone on discount, right? I can now buy more of this stuff at a discounted price. That's the way I think about it. It helps, stop me from freaking out about, certain things, but it also comes down to, not to get too deep into the weeds, but is a thing called asset allocation. And it's just kind of like a mixture of whether you have stocks or bonds or US treasuries, kind of like the big three buckets, if you will, and assets that you can buy out there, and how you want to allocate those over your portfolio.
Let's go over. So the advice that someone who's 35 would follow versus
Right.
45 versus my age 55 is going to be different because of where you are in your life. So
Right.
you maybe talk about how some of the things you suggested to me, because I've been pretty much all S&P 500 invested. But when you're like, for example, I'm 55, so technically in 4.5 years, I could take money out, or I could retire at 60 or 65. Market drops are going to mean a lot more to me because I don't have the luxury of time to wait for everything to come back around. So can you talk about
Yeah.
that, about risk profiles or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it's just basically where you are in your life and when you're going to need that money, right? So if you're 20 something and you're working, you're probably not looking to retire for another 40 years. So if the market goes down 20, 30, 40, 50%, that's fine. You don't need that money for another 40 years. So you can wait for everything to turn back around. Now, if you're 55 or 60 years old and you're very close to retirement age and you retire for the next 5 years, let's say, and the market goes down 50%, well, you don't have a whole lot of time left in your life, or time to retire to make that money back, right? I mean, the market will eventually turn around, but it could take 10, 15, years or so. You don't have that kind of time. So what most people do as they get older and older is, the theory is you put more money into,
Less risky.
when you're young, you have riskier assets like stocks. And then as you get older, you buy less and less risky assets, things like bonds, corporate bonds, US bonds. So the difference between a stock and a bond, real quick, is a stock is you literally are a part owner of a company. You own part of a company. You own part of Apple. You own part of Google. You're an owner. You're now an owner. You own something, right?
So you're on the ride, whether they do well or they go out of business.
Yeah. You're an owner. Like you're in it for the good times. You're in it for the bad times, right? Someone who owns a bond is, you're now a lender. You've now lent money to Apple. You've lent money to the US government. You've said, here's $100. In 10 years, you're going to give me my $100 back plus some interest, right? Because I don't own you. I'm no longer an owner. I'm now a lender. I'm lending you money. So it's less risky, right? We won't get into the whole reasons why, but it is less risky. So as people get older, typically they say to themselves, maybe I want to do 70% in the stock market and 30% in bonds, right? And then as I get older, maybe it's 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds. So if let's say, for example, you set it at 70-30, where you're 70% in the market, 30% in bonds. And let's say this year, the US stock market does fantastic, right? And it does so well that your allocation has moved right at the end of the year. You're now at 75% stocks and 25% bonds because the stock prices have gone up so much over the past year.
Let's go back to what allocation means. Just means all the dollars that are
Right.
in there now, because the stock market's done well, the dollar amount that's in stocks has increased. So your percentage of your investment in the stocks has increased.
Right. So for every dollar you have invested, 70%, 70 cents will be in stocks, 30%, 30 cents will be in bonds, right? So if the market does great, maybe it moves your allocation at the end of the year to 75% stocks and 25% bonds. So what you would do is a lot of people do is they would sell 5% of their stocks and buy bonds. So they're back to that 70-30 where they want to be.
And again, when you're doing bonds, you also don't need to be picking bonds. It can be just an index fund.
You go to Vanguard, or there's a lot of low-cost index funds. You go to Vanguard.
That's just the most famous one.
That's the most famous one. What a lot of people use. You can just. I don't work for Vanguard, by the way.
We don't work for anything. Literally, we're just trying to give you advice, or not advice. I'm opening your mind so that you can think more about your financial future. Because even though I'm a trainer and we talk about physical health, we cannot untie physical and financial health. That's why people who are lower income have lower health, because they've less access to health. They have less access healthcare, less access to quality foods. You need to make sure your financial health is sturdy so that your physical health can be just as sturdy.
Right. So it really comes down to what you find risky or not. If the market goes down 30%, 40%, 50%, are you going to be able to sleep at night? Everybody's different. Everyone's got a different answer. There's much like life, investing, there are no right answers per se, right? But you want to keep the best advice is keep it low expense. You don't want to get charged a ton of fees, because that's money, once again, money out the door that you'll never get back. And just do it over the long haul, over the rest of your life, and keep it as simple as possible.
Simple's always better.
Yeah.
Because if it's something so complicated, you're not going to be wanting to set aside money.
Doesn't need to be hard. And then the hardest part is just doing nothing. Set up an asset allocation that you feel comfortable with, whether it's 70-30, 80-20.
When you're younger, you're usually okay just having it all in the stock market.
But as you get older, you become more risk adverse. You don't want to take that kind of risk, especially as you get closer and closer to retirement, and especially when you are retired, where you don't have any income in, and you don't have the ability to buy more stuff because you don't have income coming in. But can I just say one more thing about that asset that I think is important? So the thought process behind it is, let's say the market conversely does terrible one year, right? So you're retired, the market does terrible. It goes from where you want to be, which is 70% stocks, 30% bonds. The stock market is terrible. So now you're 60-40, and because the stock market's gone down. So now you have 40% bonds and only 60% stocks. So at the end of the year, you sell some of your bonds and you buy stocks while stocks are cheap, right? So it does give you that ability to reset and say, I'm going to buy some stocks while they're cheaper. And then obviously as stocks do better, you sell them as they're gaining money. And that's kind of how that asset allocation goes. And you can do it once a year, maybe twice a year, maybe even quarterly. People do that asset allocation, but it's really dependent on where you are in your life, how comfortable you are with risk, and that kind of stuff.
So I think that is there any passing words or any resources besides the Reddit?
Yes. I will tell you, Reddit is a great source. There is a great subreddit called Bogleheads.
I don't follow this.
There's a guy, no one probably knows of him. Most people don't know him, named John Bogle, who's actually one of the founders of Vanguard.
Vogel. I thought his last name was Vogel.
Bogle.
Oh, it's Bogle? It's with a V.
No, it's B.
Oh, okay.
Bogle.
Okay.
Boglehead. So they have an online forum that you can go on and look at. I think it's bogleheads.org or something. or there's a subreddit for bogleheads. They're absolutely fantastic. It's a lot of just people talking about low cost index funds. You can buy, like I said, just the S&P 500. You can buy a fund that follows that you can literally buy every company in America. That's the entire stock market if you want to. They even have low cost index funds that you can buy just about every stock in the entire world. If you want to be that diversified, if you think, you want to put all your money in America, you can put, it'll allocate it some in America, some in Asia, some in Europe, right? And you can literally own just about the whole world. And all you're betting on now is the world will just keep turning and
going into the positive.
And the world will get incrementally better year over year, day over day as people go to work and make life
Was
better.
there, for someone who's not going to, like, for example, I'm not going to be doing that.
No.
So is there a book that's helpful for someone who wants to, just get the basics of investing? Or you think that Reddit flowchart's helpful? Because I'm going to assume most people, if they're not in this world and they didn't grow up with it, it's going to feel very overwhelming.
At first, I'll say anything. Everything feels overwhelming. If we first start working out, it feels overwhelming.
That's true.
But after a while, you're just like, oh, it's just something I do. But it's a great free resource that's there online. You can ask ChatGPT if you want to. But what was that book, The Millionaire Next Door? I think was pretty good if you if you actually want to read a book.
So The Millionaire Next Door is just about average people. I think most of them were just like people that work for themselves that simply put away money. And these are people who don't have like PhDs, they don't have MBAs, and they live next door to you and they're multimillionaires because they are frugal with their spending. They put their money away.
Yeah.
And it just has example of real people. And how there's like I remember one character, he liked nice cars, but he would never buy a brand new. He would buy Mercedes, but always 2 to 3 years old because the price was much less.
It's literally just building habits for your life, right? Just living below your means, constantly putting away money and saving it, investing it day after day.
Oh, I thought of another book. Remember the
year.
Morgan Housel book? What was that one called? The Philosophy of Money or the...
Yeah, Philosophy of Money.
Yeah, so he doesn't get technical. It's really chapters that are concepts about, like the one he's like, if you spend, then you don't have. And then he also talks about, he's a very well-known financial writer, about the set it and forget it. He actually goes over the research studies showing how the S&P 500 investment professionals, people who get paid to do it for a living, still don't outperform the American stock market.
Right.
Okay. Anyways, we don't want to give too many resources. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this has inspired you, if you haven't already, to look into your 401k, your Roth, and just setting aside money, whether it's one way, that piece of advice that someone had given me is she actually just has an auto deduct from her bank account into another account, or you could just go straight into one of those index fund every month. So you don't even see it. But I hope this inspires you.
Can I say one more?
Okay, he's going to do the final words before
I'm a little weird in this, but I like to think of myself in two parts. There's current Todd, who was just talking right now, and then there's future Todd, which is tomorrow me, year from now, 2 years, 10, 20 years from now me, right? And my goal as current Todd is to make future Todd's life as easy as humanly possible, because I know I'm going to get older. I'm going to be crankier when I'm older. Things are going to hurt more when I'm older. So my goal right now is to make my life easier for myself in the future. And I'll say this, I don't know if I've told you this, but what I'll actually do sometimes is, like, even at work, I'll write myself a reminder, my calendar for like 3 months down the road, where it's like, remember, Todd, in 3 months, you need to accomplish this at work. And then inside that email, I'll put PS, you're looking good, future Todd. Keep it up. Keep it up. Past Todd is very proud of you, right? Just a reminder that I'm just hooking you up, right? And then when I get that reminder, I totally forget 3 months from now, totally forget what happened. And then that reminder pops up in my email, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to do this. Thanks for reminding me, past Todd. And then there's a little love note to myself saying how wonderful you're doing. And I'm like, that past Todd is a great dude. So really, that's what this is about. It's really about setting up your future self to have more money, to be able to retire, be able to travel, be able to do whatever you want in life. Just think about your future self and how you can help that person be the
Future
best
you.
person. Future you to be the best you. That's all.
Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've liked this episode or have questions, definitely put it in I think on Spotify, that allows you to ask questions, or send me a message. All my details are in the show notes. And I'll talk to you next week.